I know that sounds complicated type thing in that type of sense, but in that type of thing, from that, there's a lot of things from doing, which I've never worked as a project manager, but in doing research or type thing in that type of sense, or going to a video game strategy type thing in that type of sense, all these things have the same planning that's involved in them and outlining. If you don't make that type of outline type thing, yes, the system can have a lot of fun. Yes, you can have the very necessity things that you can in that type of sense. But there always seems like there's some little bit of a VIP thing that can have gone on in there type of thing without some type of first striking thing in that type of sense. Really went on about that and that type of thing. Now, in that type of thing, we're going to start with a point system type thing. In a point system, that's 20 points type thing there, and that's 20 type thing in that type of sense. Now, on that type of thing, I had an ability sheet type thing in that here. Let me put you here type thing in that type of thing. And that's here. Okay, now in that type of sense, that's a point system type thing. That's here. That's a 14 type thing, and then up to an 18 type thing. That type of sense. And I don't have my highlighter type thing, which I probably need to go get that too. And then in that type of thing, that's a 17 type thing in that type of sense. And that's right. From that, that's an 18 score type thing in that type of sense. So now that's let's say we're gonna make a fighter type thing with a lot of hit points type thing in that type of sense, which won't feel great. And in that type of thing, that's a con type thing in that type of sense. And we're going to want to have an 18 stat type thing in that type of sense. That's right. And in that type of thing, boom, in that type of thing there. And from there type thing in that type of sense, that's here, and that's here type thing. Now that's an 18 stat type thing in that type of sense. That's in your constitution type thing in that type of thing. That's in the back of the book, in a player's handbook type thing in that type of sense. There's a player character type thing in that type of sense. That's here, and that's here type thing. Now that's strength type thing in that type of sense, and that's a mention of a stat type thing. That's here. Now that's strength, and the second one is dexterity type thing in that type of sense, and then constitution in that type of thing, and that's 3. And in that type of sense, that's intelligence, and that's 4. In that type of thing, and there you go. That's 4. Wisdom, that's another ability. And then charisma, that's another ability. From 6 abilities type thing, we're going to pay with 20 points type thing spread around type thing in that type of sense. Alright, now we're going to make the decision to make kind of a more of a tank type thing. Tanks usually have armor class, and they're kind of big type thing. So even if you break through the armor type thing, I guess, in that type of thing, and hit it for, say, 50, it might not be dead yet. Yeah, because they usually have a lot of hit points on the side of that with that in that type of sense. So in that type of thing, you're going to use your points type thing, and in that type of thing, Constitution represents your character's health and stamina. Constitution bonus increases the character's hit points, so the ability is important for all classes. You apply your character's Constitution modifier to each roll of a hit die. Though a penalty can never drop a result below 1, that is, a character always gains at least 1 hit point each time he or she advances in a level. And that's on page 9 type thing in that type of sense. So from there type thing, now we're going to pay for the highest ability we can here type thing off the chart. That's an 18, and it comes at a cost of 17 type thing in that type of sense. So that's 17 type thing, boom, in that type of thing in that type of sense. That's 17 points. 20 minus 17 type thing has got a remainder of 3. Now, in that type of thing, I've got a 3 remainder type thing in that type of sense. And now, I've got an 18 constitution type thing in that type of sense. From there type thing, I think I've got a green blue one or something like that in that type of sense. That's 18 type thing in that type of thing there. That's great. Now from that, let's write that first one down type thing. And that's an ability score type thing in that type of sense. That's ability score in that type of thing, and that's for an 18. Now that's a first chart type thing. That's the first thing that we did, and that's done there. Now from page 9 to 14 type thing in that type of sense. That's page 14. There's a picture of the dwarf's face. Let's go ahead and make our fighter dwarf for a type thing in that type of sense. And that's a +2 constitution type thing added to that in that type of sense. Well, we just paid for an 18 con type thing in that type of sense, and so it's 2 to that 18 type thing in that type of sense. So here we're going to write down 2 type thing here, and it says dwarfs, and that's a race type thing on page 14 type thing. The other one's on page 8, and in that type of sense, that's page 14, and that's con 2 type thing in that type of sense, and that's a con score of 18 and 2 type thing in that type of sense, and you add together, and that's 20. Now you do a modified one on your character sheet type thing, and you write that 20 down with your con. Bam! Right then and there. So now in that type of sense, you keep going. Now in that type of thing, you turn to the backpack on page 23 type thing. There's a backpack, and right next to that backpack is some bars. In that type of sense, that's a D10 type thing for a fighter type thing in that type of sense. Now, from that position type thing on page 23, the character rolls 1 hit die each time he or she gains a new level. So now you're first level type thing in that type of sense, and you have a D10 hit points type thing in that type of sense. Boom. Now, some don't like the number on that type of thing, so I'm going to grab both type thing in that type of sense. And that's a D10 type thing in that type of sense. And the 0 sometimes represents the 10 type thing in that type of sense. I got a D10, D12 afterwards type thing in that type of sense. Okay. Now, then, he or she gains a new level, then applies any Constitution modifier to the roll, and adds the result to his or her point total. Constitution type thing, that's a 20 type thing in that type of sense, so we can't do that yet type thing. Let's go back. Now in that type of thing, the next one taking that type of sense, from there, we have to go back here, that's page 14, and in that type of sense, that's 12, that's 10, and that's your abilities and modifiers. The first one was your score taking that type of sense, so that's a 20. That's a 20 type thing here on that type of thing, that's the first column type thing, that's what score. Now they see that next one next over to it, that's the modifier column type thing in that type of sense. So that's 2 columns type thing in that type of sense. And so you take the modifier that's associated with your score. And so you go down type thing in that type of sense, and that's 20 to 21 type thing, and in there type thing, that's a +5 modifier in that type of sense. Boom. In that type of thing, now you write 5 type thing in that type of sense, but unfortunately we're moving dice around for it, and that type of thing. That's a 20 con, and a 5 modifier type thing in that type of sense. So now from that 5 modifier, it says that's what's going to be there type thing, and you're going to add that to that in that type of sense. Now, go back to Constitution, apply your character's Constitution modifier to each roll of a hit die. So now it's each roll of a hit die type thing in that type of sense. Now, in that type of sense, from there type thing, you're going to go back to the backpack type thing. That was on page 9 type thing in that type of sense. With Constitution. Now, from that, on page 23 type thing, that's page 23, your hit die type thing is D10 type thing in that type of sense. So now it's said to add your Constitution type thing to that, add your Constitution, so that's your Constitution type thing in that type of sense, which is 5, to your D10 type thing of the fighter type thing in that type of sense. So it's a D10 plus 5 type thing in that type of sense. And that's here, and that's here type thing in that type of thing. Now, in that type of thing, from there type thing, from that, a character rolls then the Constitution, and thus then applies any Constitution modifier to the roll and adds the result to his or her hit point total. Thus, a character has the same number of hit dice as levels. So if you're a 5th level type thing in that type of sense, you would have 1 hit dice, 5 hit dice. For his or her first hit dice, they would have 5 hit dice. For his or her first hit dice, and that's our first level type thing in that type of sense. So that's now we established that. For our first level type thing in that type of sense, that's first level type thing, that's our first hit die type thing. And a first level character gets the maximum hit points rather than rolling. So now in that type of sense, they have to keep Gattaca rolling this 10 type thing, so they can have a 5 or 3 or 7 type thing, or 4 or 6 or 2 or 8 type thing in that type of sense, or 10. So now they have 10 type thing in that type of sense. So they have the max type thing in that type of sense, a max type thing, plus, instead of a D10 in that type of sense, plus Constitution type thing, and that was that 5 type thing in that type of sense, and that's 15. Boom. Pretty easy type thing in that type of sense. Now, from this one type thing in that type of sense, you're going to go from here, and, let's see here, you're going to take your page 22 type thing in that type of sense, because I'm not doing a night one type thing in that type of sense, but here, in that type of thing, that's first level type thing, character level, XP, then class skill max ranks, cross class skill max ranks, and a feat type thing, which is first. So now you're going to have a feat there type thing in that type of sense, and that's first type thing in that type of sense, and you're going to take toughness type thing in that type of sense, and from there type thing, toughness adds on 3 hit points. And that's right. In that type of thing here. Now that's going to be 18 type thing in that total. Now from there type thing, you turn type thing in that type of sense from here to your fighter type thing. There's Tordek, the one that's in D&D, PHB PSA type thing in that type of sense. And you turn, which is the Dungeons and Dragons Player's Handbook public service announcement, making a Far Side joke of Tordek and Lita, and there's Ragdar type thing in that type of sense on page 38 type thing, and not actually the artist name type thing in that type of sense. Now your first level character type thing, that's first in that type of sense 0, 0 in a class feat compared to being a character feat from like a race feat type thing in that type of sense. And these things stack type thing in that type of sense. Now that was a character feat type thing, that's on page 22, and dwarf type thing, which is don't have one, and that's a race type thing in that type of sense, and this is page 39 type thing in that type of sense. So in that type of sense, they're the same one, and they mean the same one type thing in that type of sense. So we got to go back to page 22, which is right. Now feat. Every character gains 1 feat at first level and another every level, divisible by 3, 3rd, 6th, 9th, 12th, 15th, and 18th. These feats are in addition to any bonus feats granted as class features. See the class descriptions later. These feats are in addition type thing in that type of sense. So in addition type thing, that means plus. So page 22 feat type thing, the one that's on the chart here type thing in that type of sense, and the one in your fighter type thing on page 39. That's 2 feats. So in that, you could take toughness again type thing in that type of sense, but I'm not going to type thing in that type of sense. I'm going to probably take weapon focus type thing. Now, in that type of thing, that's your weapon focus type thing in a melee type thing, although in Star Wars type thing in that type of sense, I'm going to have to think about that and that type of thing, but as long as the con works out with it type thing in that type of sense, you get the idea. And in that type of sense, there's the first level type thing in that type of sense, and it says 1, so your level hasn't changed. That's the toughness type thing in that type of sense, and that's also the toughness. First level character, 10 plus 5 plus 3, and you have an 18 hit points along with weapon focus at first level type thing in that type of sense.